Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the Compliance Chronicles. I guess we're at that time of the year where we should be saying season's greetings, so I'm going to say season's greetings. Glad to have you guys back with us for another episode. We continue to just say thank you and show our appreciation to all of you who continue to listen, to follow along, to subscribe, and to comment on our episodes. Again, we're delighted that our most recent episode to date has become our most viewed episode. We're now in the 20,000+ views, and we're ecstatic, and we just are really humble in the fact that we've been able to achieve this in under a year. With that being said, we will always encourage you guys who listen, who watch, who are not subscribed, to subscribe, turn your notification bells on, like, and comment. Yeah, so this episode today is one that we discussed following just conversations we had in the last week or so, which is around the budget and actually the impact on the budget. And when you think about budget, it's not really the first thing you think about is not really compliance, right? But I think, particularly for this episode, I think when we took stock on it following the budget and the impact in terms of tax changes, there definitely was some big potential impacts or impact on compliance and the compliance departments and within teams. So I think we're going to delve into that today, and I think that's something definitely that you were really keen on discussing, Alex.
Yeah, I'm always keen to talk about tax. Such an interesting subject. Yeah, I think like neither of us are tax experts, right? So we'll put that out there first. And for our non-UK listeners, because we do have quite a few now, this specific conversation is in relation to the UK budget that was announced recently, and most importantly, we'll cover it in detail, what it means for online casino at the moment, because it impacted a lot of areas, but we'll focus on, I think, to begin with, for online casino. And, when you were talking about the 22,000 views just then, it made me laugh, because I was talking to my son earlier and he showed me a video he posted of just some random nonsense. And he's like, oh, look, I'm on 1 million views.
No way.
He's on 1 million views on this.
He's on 1 million views.
He got a million views on this one video. Don't get me wrong, it's funny, but it just made me laugh. Like we're here.
We need to get more marketing, don't we?
I mean, we definitely don't want to do what's in his video. I know that much. But yeah, still, it's really impressive. So yeah, the UK tax budget. Well, your first thoughts, or do you want to talk about, to begin with? So what was the main change? What was the big thing that happened? Or you want me to?
Yeah, I think. I'll you can. Again, you're really keen. I think there were some key topics that you wanted to address. I think for me, the biggest thing about this budget was not so much that it was one that was targeting profits, targeting specific industries, targeting, tax or the recouping of tax from industries. It was more about how big the potential impact and hit was around for compliance with these tax changes, particularly in the gambling sector, again, which is where we'll focus on.
Targeted gambling for a big part of it.
Yeah.
So our industry, the one that we mostly work with, was targeted, was 100% targeted.
Yeah. And it's the impact on processes, on compliance teams, that this tax hike, many have called it, which is the truth, that tax hike has had and will have on the industry and ultimately compliance, and that's kind of thing.
Yeah, so specifically the main focus, I think, of this conversation then is the if we talk about the remote gaming duty, so from April 2026 it will go from 21%, I don't know whether to look at you or the camera, it will go from 21% to 40%, which is huge, right? Like if you're,
it's double, it's double,
if you're an operator that's working on, say, a 25-30% margin, this isn't a trim on your finances. This is a straight up amputation. It's impactful. And I suppose the discussion where compliance comes into it is several points. Where is it going to be felt, first of all? Like, are compliance going to feel it? Are we going to see lower levels of compliance, lower standards of compliance? Are we going to see people exiting the market? Which, there's discussions around that. So, yeah, it's the impact that it's going to have, both on people that stay, people that go, and ultimately the customer as well. This is going to impact the customer, which is the main thing that I believe, I hope, the intention of the hike was aimed to try and reduce that risk, reduce that harm, but that's not going to be the result.
Yeah, so I think I read a stat. I read estimates that these tax hikes in the gambling sector or for the gambling on the gambling sector are due to bring the treasury around 1.1 billion pounds between once these come into force and 2030. With that being said, what was your first thought then? So that's the estimate of how much it's bringing in. What was your first thought when you saw this change? Did you think the tax is going to increase, or did you think something else at the time when you first saw the change from 21% to 40%?
I mean, my first thought was, especially the announcement around like what it could mean for the economy, right? That 1.1 billion obviously stands out, and that's what it could mean. But typical political update is that let's focus on what people want to hear, but then hiding key information from the public, hiding from everyone, and those in our industry can see that. But to everyone else, it was, why not give the full context? So that 1.1 billion sounds great, and it is great, but what it actually means is fewer jobs. That's ultimately what's going to happen. Fewer jobs, so that's going to be an economical hit. It means less player safety, reduced player safety, and the most important important element is that it pushes customers to black market. So 1.1 billion sounds great, but at what cost?
Yeah.
Like, for me, that they should have given the full picture. But realistically, and I know there's no point in moaning about it now, but that should never happen, because the gambling industry is constantly being hit, right, with different things. Is, you've got white paper, then you've got all these things that are meant to happen. So white paper, single customer review, then you get these affordability checks. So there's all these discussions around what's meant to happen, but it's like there's no strategy. There's no long-term strategy in terms of, we're thinking of doing all of these things, and what impact is it going to have? And let's put our strategy out there. Like any normal business puts a 2, 5, 10-year plan, whatever. It's like they have discussions, or not, or they don't have any discussions, and then someone's bright idea was, why don't we increase gambling tax? And you can imagine that being in a room full of people that have no insight to how the industry works, no insight to the impact it could have, and then somebody's just gone, oh yeah, that could make us an extra 1.1 billion for the UK, for the government, and they've just gone, yeah. And it just, for me, it's that it clearly, there clearly was no expertise in that discussion.
Yeah, I think it's important that we discuss this for the episode around the involvement of experts or other industries. So, for example, we're talking about black market, and we're talking about the impact potential on organised crime. Has the National Crime Agency or other law enforcement agency being consulted in the decision here, because there is a indirect or direct impact to this. So, okay, let's break it down then. Let's talk about what actually has changed, and then who feels this change. So, when we say this hike has come for the gambling sector, is it only the gambling sector that has been impacted by the budget, or is there change that is going to be felt across other regulated sectors?
I mean, this change directly will impact the gambling sector. I mean, whether it's going to have a knock-on effect to other industries, I would imagine so. I imagine financial services, for example, will feel it, and that's mainly because, for gambling operators, they use payment providers. Legal operators use legal payment providers, and I would imagine, there's going to be a lot of discussions from operators being had with their payment providers to try and reduce fees. So whether that's them feeling it or just a negotiation, I don't know. But this impacts the gambling sector. I don't. Like, did you have another sector in mind that you were you were hinting towards?
I think the budget did reinforce the commitment to tackling fraud, tackling AML, so and stuff like the enforcement of APP and PSR changes.
For the audience, was
so
APP and PSR?
Your payment service regulation changes around kind of like liability on fraud now being with the firm rather than.
Oh, so will it impact law enforcement? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so I think
Okay.
I think there will be. I think what is done in terms of other sectors is just reinforced. If they believe that, okay, maybe APP fraud, or maybe the enforcement of these new regulations might be quite relaxed. I think that just it reinforced that actually the government wants to encourage the regulators to be proactive in enforcing these new changes. So I think that's the main change in terms of, if you as a financial services company, or a company in the regulated sector businesses around that financial side of the business, that you have to kind of take stock, and you really have to apply frameworks and controls that really looking to mitigating these risks, and showing that adherence. But I think that is just an inference from the commitment, rather than, like you're saying, the direct impact, which says 20% here. So look, there are instances in the past where there have been kind of significant changes, and they've led to two things. Like you're saying, there's been potential impact on the growth of the illegal grey or black markets, however you want to call it. But there's also been changes to taxes which have led to increased compliance. So if you look at the point of consumption tax 2014, where we had an increase in the tax on the gambling sector, those profits caused losses. Those additional taxes cost losses. It did cost,
Cost losses. What do you mean?
It cost losses for businesses. So it reduced profit margins, similar as you mentioned it before. It wasn't well worded, was it? Cost losses. It created losses, or reduction in profit, which caused potential losses for companies who had a smaller profit margin. It caused companies to exit the UK market, and it caused a greater rise to your kind of online black market operations. But then if you look at the banking levies, the increase in banking levies, I think it was around 2011, after the financial crisis, that was the opposite effect. That caused greater investment into compliance teams to ensure that actually companies were able to adhere to these new changes, and also the increased scrutiny and strictness of the regulator. And as we've seen, I think we're at a conundrum, right? Because we've seen that for the UK especially, we're talking about the UK, there's been no let up in terms of the Gambling Commission's enforcement strategy. They're continuing to kind of hit hard on operations and operators, and when it comes to safer gambling, social responsibility, and AML compliance. So which way do you think this will go with the changes? Do you think there'll be an opportunity for compliance to grow and expand?
No, I knew you were going to ask a question like this on whether it's going to be positive or negative for compliance, and I'm leaning towards the fact it's going to be different for every single operator, right? So every operator will be looking at their processes, every area of the business, and seeing where they can do things differently. So right now, I imagine the conversations in pretty much every boardroom are: do we adapt? Do we double down? Or do we exit? I think those are the conversations being had. Those that double down will invest in compliance. Those that say, yeah, we're going to stay and we're going to do things right, they will invest in compliance. I think they're going to be few and far between. I think your average operator is looking at everything within the business and deciding where we can cut costs. That's the reality. Because if I was running a business and taxes just got increased, what would I be doing? I would probably looking at where can I cut costs to make that money back. So I think that's what most operators will do. And I think compliance will be here. I think that's the reality, because but with the caveat that is dependent on the compliance team themselves. So if the compliance team, off the back of this budget, for example, have sat down independently and gone, what can we do differently? Where can we be more agile here to help the business? If they've sat down and done that, and then they've gone to their board and said, here's what we're going to do, here's our contribution now, albeit there's not a ton of things you can do in compliance because you're already struggling in a really tightly regulated market. But let's say they've done that, they're already in a good place. Those compliance professionals and teams that haven't done that I would be expecting that they're going to feel job losses, that they're going to be asked. I don't really want to say it, but I reckon they'll be asked to cut corners in certain extents. Like you can imagine, right? You got processes in place, and then your business is about to lose X amount of millions potentially. I would expect them to say, right, where can we take more risk?
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a realistic conversation in most operators, that they're going to be asking where they can take more risk. And for me, I'd put that back to the board anyway, and I would say that these are our areas where we're fully compliant. These are the areas where we're not compliant, and these are the areas where we probably go above and beyond. And if those areas can be adapted a little bit, that's great. But otherwise, I think compliance will feel it from a negative perspective for the most part.
So your thought is more it's going to be a case of doing more for less, or even worse, doing more with less when it comes to.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I can only ever lean on personal experience, right? And I've worked in businesses before where when they've been hit financially, the first conversation I have is, Alex, where can we cut things? Who can you lose in your team with minimal impact, right? Those conversations happen, and they're horrible and they're unfortunate, but I think they're happening not just within compliance, they'll happen across other teams as well. That there'll be discussions around what can you do differently, and they're horrible discussions, right? Because I think you said this before, we've discussed before, that compliance is the minimum standard, right? And most businesses are scraping by on compliance, because the reality is in the UK, in some areas, you don't know what is good enough. You follow the rules, but even then, sometimes the rules aren't, sometimes that's even not good enough. And we see that a lot with enforcement action, where we read it and we're like, well, that sounds like they've actually got an okay process, or they're doing things okay. And then they've been fined X amount of millions, and we're left a little bit lost. So I think it's going to be tough for compliance right now. Compliance are going to feel it, but no more than any other department. I think every department will be conscious that they could be impacted by this. What do you think? You think it's going to be a good thing or a bad thing?
I think for those operators who are able to stay, who are able to consolidate, I think like you said, I think the compliance team definitely has to be innovative, and I'll get into that when we go into kind of what potentially compliance teams can do. But I do see opportunity. Whenever there's challenge, there's opportunity. Whenever there's change, there's opportunity. So I do think there'll be an opportunity for compliance team in this, whether it means they might have to downsize, or maybe they use RegTech, or maybe they are able to, use this opportunity to get further investment in automation and technology within their businesses.
Where's the opportunity if they're told to downsize?
Because downsizing might only mean in terms of potential headcount. But what about in the?
Where's the opportunity there?
Yeah. The opportunity there is there's always opportunity, and it kind of crosses over that. Let's say the AI conversation. The AI you could see it as a negative in terms of it might mean that there's less human, but also it should mean there's a better quality of human, if that makes sense, in terms of they're doing better quality work. So I think it's about looking at that.
Right. Because I don't agree with you at all there. So let me put it to you this way, right? Because I imagine this is a conversation that will happen in at least a couple of businesses based on the tax duty, the tax change. I come to you and I say, Ray, because of this tax implication, you got to lose 50% of your staff. You got to make them redundant next week. Please tell me where the opportunity is.
I mean that's. I don't think. I mean, if where is the impact and an assessment there? So if a company comes to you and says if your board comes to you and says you got to lose 50%, I would first say has it been calculated? How the business calculated that by losing 50% of the compliance operations, we're
doing it across the board. Every department has to trim 50%. That's that's what we've done as our calculation. I'm hoping this is not conversations that people are having, but just because you said like if there's like job losses, there's always opportunity, and I'm not fully disagreeing with you, and I'm hoping that you can shed some light, because there will be people that will be having this conversation and be thinking, damn, there's no light at the end of this tunnel, and they're going to be hurt by this because they don't want to lose people in their team. And likewise, and also people that are going to lose their jobs, they'll be looking at this and going, well, I've lost my job. What do I do now? It's a horrible time of year. Where is the opportunity for them?
So the opportunity is the lens of actually, can we make our operations more efficient? Can we do things better? And if you can do things better, you can always then reduce costs. So if you're able to create a better operations, more efficiency, reduce costs in terms of, you know, how you create less friction for customers in the journey, how you create less costs in terms of your utilization of third party ongoing monitoring, then you can actually retain more of your compliance staff. So again, it's about seeing that as an opportunity. Can we be more efficient in order to retain as much as possible of the human workforce? So that's where I say that, you know, using that as an opportunity to look into the under the hood and say, actually, what can we actually become more efficient on? What can we reduce costs in ourselves so we can retain as much as of the workforce as possible? And it's like, I think it's what you said in terms of going to the board and say, look, this is the investment we've made. This is what we've been able to save. And then you can have that conversation. You can lead the conversation rather than a board saying, well, hey, you have to do 40%. You can say, actually, we've been able to save 20% by doing this and this. So actually, we want to negotiate. Actually, we think that this is the situation that we can actually maintain our compliance.
My question to you would be, why the hell were you not doing that in the first place? The point I'm getting is, and listen, you're a very positive person and you see the good in everything, and that's I don't want you to change that characteristic. That's really good. I'm just genuinely worried that there are going to be people impacted by this, job losses, financial impact to people on a personal level, that I don't think was thought through.
Yeah.
And I hope they do see opportunity in this, and I hope that they come out of it in different jobs and hopefully back in the industry if that's what they want to do. But I don't see a positive for those people in this at the moment. I think this wasn't calculated. This impact of what it's going to do to operators, and we say this all the time, for the most part, the operators that we see, they do a good job. They work hard. To have this, thrown at them, I think is completely unnecessary. Like right now, I think there could have been other things that were done, especially when you look at the fact that it doesn't really change anything. People want to gamble, so it's not actually putting people off gambling. It's just moving them to illegal operators. I think the cost is so high, and I don't think that was thought through. But I don't want you to change your positive outlook.
Look, if I was the decision maker in terms of the budget, would I have hiked it by double and not even staggered the increase? Absolutely not. The UK gambling sector contributes annually $4 billion a year to the tax purse.
I thought it was 12 billion.
I think it's 4 billion.
I don't know.
Yeah, and also it supports over 100,000 jobs in the UK alone. So would I have done that? Absolutely not. But I'm saying whenever there is a challenge, you have to try to find opportunities in that challenge. So if you can reduce the burden, or if you can reduce the cost of your operations for compliance, then you can actually potentially try to retain as much of the operations as possible. That's the point I'm making. So, but I agree with you. I don't agree with the decision, but I'm just saying the opportunity. So then, for you then, who really does pay the price when it comes to these tax changes? Who pays the price? If it's not the company, who pays the price?
Customers. The companies, the operators are going to feel this. They're paying a massive price in this, but it's the customers. There is no way that when discussions were being had around increasing the duty, that player safety was taken into consideration. Absolutely no way. Because, again, like I said earlier, all of these customers that want to gamble, but they're going to feel it, right? There's going to be less of a player experience for various reasons, They're going to be pushed into the black market, which means they're not protected. They're not looked after. There's no financial crime protection. There's no safer gambling protection. So these guys are hurt the most. And we had a discussion right when it first got announced, and we had that discussion around other industries and the impact it has. So when tobacco taxes increased, right? Everyone thinking this is a great idea. We're going to make billions as the exchequer's looking at it thinking, okay, we're going to make billions more, for the UK economy. But actually, no. All that happened is cigarette smuggling increased by like 200% within 40 hours. And to this day, cigarette smuggling, the crime is through the roof. So they had to then spend more money on UK border force. It ended up costing more money than it was making, but that's still in existence. When Northern Ireland had that massive fuel gap with the UK, same thing, thinking that it's gonna cause less cars on the road. You know, it's gonna save money. All of these things, they're looking at the positives, but actually, what happened was fuel smuggling, fuel crime, illegal fuel consumption went through the roof. That is exactly what is happening here. Like every time there is a change in tax, like a significant change in tax, it doesn't reduce the demand. All it does is change. A decision is made then whether that demand is legal or illegal. That is all it is.
Yeah.
Tax increases, making things harder for customers. There's no reduction on demand. It's just pushing that demand from legal to illegal, and that is all that is happening.
Yeah. And so for you said the customers, when you say the customers are the ones who will really pay the price, what do you mean? What do you say they'll pay the price? What is the price they pay? Is it just having worse odds? Or is it having a worse experience when we say the
Yeah, I
pay the
mean,
price?
I would expect that operators aren't going to be bonusing
Yeah.
as much. I mean, listen, I'm putting this across the board. Obviously, I don't work in the commercial side of businesses, so I could be way off here. But I would imagine there's going to be changes to the way bonuses are working, RTP, like return to player rates. Like I imagine all of these small things, and don't get me wrong, they're very small things, right? But if I'm a customer and I go on to, I'm not going to name an operator, but I go onto their website and it's a legal website and there's no offers, there's no bonuses, and I'm going to get stopped every 2 hours because of safer gambling, and I've got to set limits, and I'm forced to, and I self-exclude when I've got harm, and I've got all these notices coming up every 5 minutes telling me how to gamble responsibly. All of these things that good legal operators do. Obviously, I've given some extreme examples. I don't think they all do that. And I've got all of this nonsense, and then the experience isn't as good. I want to gamble. I'm going to the black market because some of the operators who are operating legally will make the choice that they still want UK customers, but they will go black market. I hope it's not a lot. I really do. But I think it will happen. People want to gamble. Unfortunately or fortunately, they want to gamble.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they'll be forced to go elsewhere to have that same experience they were previously having in a safe environment.
Yeah. Guys, thank you for continuing to listen to the episode. We really appreciate your engagement. One thing we like to do is just reinforce and really ask you guys to continue to like, comment, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and turn your notification bells on. Thank you. Yeah, I think I agree with you because I think the industry, especially the UK industry, has willingly, but also with the pressures from the regulator, increased their proactivity around safer gambling, financial vulnerability, and how they really assess this being a lot more dynamic. So I think if we are seeing customers lost into the black market, then of course those same standards are not upheld or not a requirement, and it's almost a race to the bottom. So what does this mean then when you say black market? And kind of what impact is it going to have on the black market and potential organised crime? Do you think they are then the unintended winners from this tax change?
Yeah, I imagine every unlicensed operator was rubbing their hands together when this got announced. And the way I look at it is if you run an illegal casino, right? So you operate in the black market, you run an illegal casino, that is organised crime. That is serious organised crime. Simple as that. Because that's not just a petty theft or something small. That is organised criminal activity. So, yeah, if I'm a black market operator following this announcement, I'm rubbing my hands together because I know this is going to be good for me and bad for everyone else.
Yeah. I got again the stat man. There was a stat even before the budget was announced that into 2025 alone, the black market operations were estimated to be around 9% in the UK, which is actually a 345% increase from 2020, and that's just on a conservative estimate. I know you've been in briefings recently, and I believe most people think that actually it's above double digits in terms of the black market operations.
I think, and you know what, because you're saying that, sorry to interrupt, but while it's in my head, that's one thing that's really confusing, right? And why it looks like there's a lack of or non-existent communication and strategy is there was a briefing recently.
Yeah, take us through that because I mean,
yeah. So there was a briefing recently delivered by the Gambling Commission, and big focus, massive conversations around tackling black market activity. I don't know how that conversation happens or that briefing happens, and then within a few weeks, this takes place. They're so contradictory. It's unreal. I mean, so
Well, the budget pledged 26 million, didn't it? 26 million to the commission to fight and tackle black market operations. Is that enough?
Yeah, I mean, that's like, okay, that's like dishing out guns to the public and then saying, but don't worry, we're going to put 10 extra police on the street to take care of it. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. That is like the worst idea ever. Yeah, let's increase a criminal activity, but don't worry, we're going to give you a little bit of help to tackle it. How about you just don't let it increase in the first place? So so on that note then, do you think that this decision was taken without any conversation with the commission?
I think there's very little dialogue. I think there was very little dialogue with the commission, and I think probably even less dialogue with the UK enforcement. Because for me, as a financial crime expert, as an MLRO, doing this looks to have created the perfect storm, for black market operations. Less need for KYC checks, less need for your financial vulnerability checks, less need for your ongoing monitoring, due diligence. Which then I've written them down here because I was like, what does this actually mean? It's almost like allowing your professional money launderers to hide in and amongst your legitimate customers, because like I said, we will have a lot of legitimate customers going into potential black markets, especially if we have a lot of closures in terms of like a lot of operators exiting the market, a lot of the industry exiting the market. You then have your legitimate customers going into potential black market operations, and then we know how promiscuous customers are genuinely in terms of like they will gamble across multiple verticals, multiple operators. It will make it easier for your launderers to be and hide amongst them, and it'll be harder for law enforcement and compliance teams to actually identify who your legitimate customers are and who your illegitimate customers are, because you have potential people gambling with a black market operator and also a licensed operator. And so I think it definitely does look like it's creating almost the perfect storm for that typical layering, that typical increase in organized crime through black markets. So for me,
fraud as well.
Fraud. I think we're seeing. We said we had harder to distinguish, and then I think genuinely you're then unable to create modeling. I think a lot of the good work that law enforcement does, and we as industry do, we're able to model. What does a typical legitimate customer look like? And with now this dilution, it's going to be harder to model. It's going to be harder to understand actually what is atypical behavior, what is not atypical behavior, and then I think it then increases the exposure to new typologies, new actual financial crime risk. So, again, how was that dialogued with law enforcement? I don't think there was much.
So do you think then, based on what you've just said there and like the impact for financial crime, do you think that there's going to be some operators that are looking at this, the legitimate ones that are going to look at this and go, coming back to what I said earlier, we need to take more risk. So at the moment, we stop customers when they have deposited £1 million. Should put a number out there because I know nobody's got that. I hope nobody's got that threshold. But we stop customers when they deposit £1 million a month, and the MLRO is made aware, and the MLRO submits SARS, all of that stuff. Do you think there's parts of AFC compliance that are going to be impacted by this because they're going to be encouraged to take a little bit more risk?
Potentially. What I think it reinforces for me is that we need to move away from actual, it sounds weird, but we need to move away from the money, because you always say follow the money, but I think we need to move away from your arbitrary financial thresholds and really move to behavioural based customer risk assessing the type of products, the type of pay methods.
Most operators should be doing that anyway.
In a really dynamic way. I mean, they should be, but I think we're repeatedly seeing that this is not the case. I think what we're seeing is that it happens, but it's still led by, how much a customer might win or lose. But actually, it should be. I think this should reinforce. Actually, we need to move away from that. Actually, to focus on
Yeah, but
behavioral model.
so I agree with you 100%. We should, but that's made almost impossible. And I don't want to go over to like an audit conversation, but that's made almost impossible when every piece of enforcement action is financially led. Customer lost X, customer deposited Y. So every typology referenced by a regulator is normally financial related. How can operators then move away from it being?
Because I think, again, I believe that if you have a strong enough methodology behind your assessing of risk, then a simple arbitrary financial threshold shouldn't be enough for you to be held to account. You should be able to have enough confidence. You be able to be in a strong enough position to argue against that. Well, somebody lost. What was recently? Somebody lost, 15,000 in 12 months. And source of wealth, information wasn't requested. But actually, if you have a risk methodology which can evidence that you've assessed, these 20 factors, where they're from, where they're source, what other information you have.
But then, do you think so? I used the financial one, but let's say, for example, an operator has all of that. Do you think there are conversations that are going to be had where they say, look, increase that financial threshold, and also, them 20 factors you look at? Can you just look at 10 for the next 12 months because we want to get? Do you think those types of conversations are going to be had?
In terms of trying to balance the tax increase and trying to return?
Yeah, that's I'll ask it in a really long-winded way, but ultimately, do you think they're asking compliance departments, AFC, safer gambling?
Can we relax compliance to try to recover some of the tax losses?
Do you think those conversations are happening?
I think they're always going to happen. I think even without this, I think they would happen on a regular basis to see kind of what can be done to, to make how we like to say it in the flowery word, the user journey more pleasant. So I definitely think these conversations are happening.
So give us some Ray Wilson's words of wisdom. Wilson's words of wisdom for our colleagues in compliance that might be feeling this, right? Might be part of those conversations where they're saying, "Can you take more? Well, we want you to take more risk. We're encouraging you to take more risk." How do they handle that? What do they do right now?
I think it goes back to what we said just a bit earlier. I think for me, I'll do two things. I would immediately look to do my own impact assessment, and in doing that, I would look at actually what efficiency savings can be made in the current processes, current controls, current framework. What cost savings can we make ourselves without actually anybody imposing them on us? And then I'll be presenting that to the board. And then on top of that, if there's any sort of, can we, reduce, can we make things more relaxed? I would be saying, yeah, of course we can, but I'll be also presenting a short-term, medium and long-term view of that risk if we do that. And so I would be presenting that we can do that, but that's very short-sighted because at the end of the day, we want to be sustainable. So this is what the impact will be maybe in the short term. We might get away with it for 2 months, 6 months, 8 months. But medium term, this is the impact. Long term, this is the impact. So it's up to you guys to decide on that. So I think that's definitely, you have to be very clear on kind of what you can offer to the board to actually mitigate or reduce cost or improve framework, and then also present them with the short, medium, long term of their own of view, almost forcing them to come to their own conclusion, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's what I would do.
I mean, it comes back to what we always say: there's one thing more expensive than compliance.
Yeah.
Non-compliance. Yeah. And I think you're right. As long as those people in compliance are happy to have those conversations and take a look at their processes and take a look at their risk appetite the right way, I think they'll come out of it okay for the most part. But I do think there'll be the odd few that will have their hands forced and they're almost told, this is going to happen. This is what we're going to do.
I think it's actually that word, risk appetite. I think I've always wanted to have a conversation about this because I think it gets banded about, but I don't think actually a lot of the time compliance and actually the company are aligned in terms of what the risk appetite is. The company might say we want to take this risk, but actually don't really know the risk appetite. So by taking that risk, actually it moves our risk appetite from medium to very high. So in terms of risk appetite, how can a compliance team use that risk appetite statement or that risk appetite to actually garner continuing investment or a reduction in that potential desire of the board or commercial to actually take additional or maybe unreasonable risk?
I think it comes down to that data and that visual explanation. Like if you can show them and they've got access to your, let's say, your risk management tool, every business is different, and you can show them, if you decide to, I don't know, let's think, you decide that you no longer want to have safer gambling measures in place. You want customers to have a free for all, no pop-ups, no emails, no loss limits, etc. This is what happens to our risk, and you show them visually. Put these things in place, and it goes from low to high, critical, however you want to score it. You can show them that, and then part of that visualization is once it goes into high critical, this is what it means in terms of if we were to have a regulatory assessment right now, this is what the outcome would be. You show them that. I think there's very few boards that look at that and go, yeah, we're still happy with that risk, because your risk management tool is based on their risk appetite statement. Yeah. You can, like, compliance teams can draft it if they want to, but it's signed off by the board. So as long as you're aligned on that, I don't think there will be many boards that take that decision without knowing the risk. I think it will just be a case of we know the risk and we're willing to take it. But usually compliance professionals are more risk averse generally, and they're going to look at that and go, well, yeah, you're happy with the risk, but I'm not happy with that risk because it's me that's got to sit through an assessment, or it's me that, will be on the end of a public statement. So I think for the most part, they're all aware, they're all aligned on the risk. It's just they might not all be aligned on the fact that they're happy to take it.
Yeah, because I've seen it quite a few times. This is why I'm kind of digressing. I've seen it quite a few times where I've gone into to do consultancy work within different kind of firms across different sectors. So not just the gambling sector, but different sectors. And then you have a risk appetite statement or a business-wide risk assessment, which says, the company's, risk appetite is low or medium. But in reality, actually, the real risk at the moment is way higher than what the risk appetite says. And it's almost like nobody's paying attention. Nobody's actually addressing the fact that there's a quite a big disparity between what the risk appetite is and actually what the real term risk today of the company is when it comes to compliance.
Yeah, but in the risk appetite statement, it's not just a case of us saying our risk appetite is low. It has to be backed up by evidence. Like if a business is saying our risk appetite is low within the statement, that should be followed by we ensure that our risk is managed and maintained at a low level by doing A, B, C, D, and you document all of those things there. And it's a living document. The moment you start to deviate from what is your risk appetite level, that has to change to reflect it. There's nothing wrong with having a medium or a high risk appetite. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. But what you find is that 99.9% of the time, you go into a firm and you ask for a risk appetite statement. I can't recall the last time I saw someone that had a high risk appetite. Definitely not in gambling or financial services. I think one in alcohol. It was an airline that we worked with. Not to do with, they don't have a high risk appetite for when they're flying, just other things with how they manage the airline. I don't want to scare anyone. I don't think anyone ever puts low. But I think in this case, like coming back to the tax discussion, I think if they're being asked to make cuts, cut corners, do things differently, everyone will be well aware of the risk. And it's just a case of, coming to an agreement that, we all know the risks here. We know the consequences if it comes to fruition, but we're going to do it anyway. I think that's more of the conversation that will take place.
So what can or what should compliance teams do now in your eyes?
I think the first thing, if they haven't done it already, is they shouldn't be seeing this as a commercial challenge, right? They shouldn't be seeing this as something that other departments are going to solve. This is a business challenge, and compliance are part of the business. And you've got to pull your weight. Where can you contribute as much as possible? Now, whether that is, I'm not saying go away and start, sacking your staff, but where can you make differences within your team that perhaps you hadn't made time for previously? So we know what it's like working in compliance, right? You have very little opportunity to do the things that you want to do because you're too busy doing the things that you have to do. Mm-hmm. I've got to remember that. That's quite nice. Yes. But we know what that's like, right? So I think that compliance departments where, let's say they've been focusing on improving their data protection tools, and that was critical for them for the last 3 months, and they've been focused on that. It's having the foresight having the quick reaction to, I'm going to drop that right now. That was critical, but right now what's critical is I need to help my business and looking at wherever they can make changes. So that's number one, is reacting quickly to where they can contribute to the business. And number two, is I don't know how to say this without it sounding really bad, but if there are so many compliance professionals who are very, very risk averse and they will always take the path of least resistance, nothing wrong with that. But when you're in this type of scenario, potentially wartime for the business, you've got to adapt. You've got to do things differently. And if you and the business are aligned on we need to take more risk, be flexible. I'm not saying that you should go away and say, all right, guys, we made a decision, there's no more limits in place and forget GDPR. But be open to those discussions. If previously you would have dismissed it right off the bat because the risks were too high, be open to those discussions because everybody has to pull their weight now. Every department, every function, every person within a gambling business right now has to be agile. And compliance shouldn't be seeing themselves as exempt from that because their job is to protect the company, because probably now more than ever is when it counts.
Yeah, I like that. I like that because you said, should we have the business should be having these war room discussions. Well, most businesses are probably already having these war room discussions. Any business worth its weight off the back of this tax change, especially in the industry that is the gambling sector, will be having.
I think some won't. I think like what you said before about you're doing one of three things right. Right, you're planning to adapt, you're planning to fight, or you're planning to exit.
Yeah.
Those companies that right off the bat, you don't need the war room to know that actually based on our margins, this 21 to 40% increase by April 2026 is game over for us. They should be planning the exit. And the compliance team, again, should be contributing to that. How do we plan it so that customers are still protected? How do we plan it so we go into another regulated market, for example? Like, you don't want to be part of a black market operator, an illegal operator. So it depends what decision they've made out of those three.
No, it's right. And I think the compliance department should be doing that themselves. So the business is doing that. I think, like you're saying, the compliance department should be doing that, should be having their own review and assessment of actually the impact these changes have made, depending on one of those three potential outcomes. Also, looking at, can we strategize? Can we in compliance strategize rather than waiting for the business to strategize? Can we strategize in compliance? Can we prioritize? Can we look at what we can prioritize or reprioritize off the back of this? Can we look at ways, as I said before, can we create further efficiencies? Can we look at ways we can generate cost savings ourselves to show proactiveness and to also get buy-in? Because when you show proactiveness, like, you can get buy-in from the board, which ultimately potentially can reduce the level of impact that is imposed on the compliance. I think for me, there are a couple of things down that I would be doing. I think one thing I'll be definitely doing, and it's something that it's frustrating me in the recent past, and it often frustrates me, is that there's loads of processes I've gone in the past and looked and assessed and audited and asked, why do you do something this way? And then you'll hear, because we've been doing that we've been doing that. It's a legacy process. A legacy process. There should be very little reason why any processes in your business exists from 2022, 2023, let alone 2019, 2020. So I think this is the opportunity to look at every legacy process and question everything, question why, question the rationale, and look at where then you can actually become more efficient in stuff and make changes. Often when people think of the word change, they think that it's a massive overhaul, but I think often the best changes are the ones that are subtle, the ones that have the least impact. So sometimes just go away and look at actually what subtle changes can we make that could be quick wins, but actually be tangible. So I think that's one thing that, again, is important that compliance teams go away and do. Look at legacy processes and look at changes subtly. What subtle changes can we do? What changes can we do without actually needing anybody else? We can be self-sufficient in those changes. It might be something as simple as, improving, templates that are used for teams. It could be simple as, utilizing, better workflows, formulas, and that way that reduces an analyst time to do a review, and then that increases the breadth of actually tasks that can be done. So you might have, your business might have been, looking to hire, 15, 20 more analysts, but actually, can we create better efficiencies so we actually don't need to on board 20 more analysts. We need to board 5, 6, 7, 8 because we've improved the efficiency of working ourselves. So that could be another thing. It's often we're looking at actually taking away from the business, but it might have been actually how can we just manage the business scaling and consolidating as well as actually just looking at how we can reduce. So I think that's another thing. And yeah, I think championing innovation and all that. I think we've said it so many times before. I think there's a lot of innovation, a lot of untapped talent within compliance, and I think this is opportunity to champion innovation. So what we should be doing is looking at actually encouraging everybody to become innovative, from your analyst all your way to your MLRO, head of compliance at this point.
Yeah. Do you think that's not done enough at the minute?
I don't think it's done enough. I think there is more appetite, but again, I still don't think it's done enough. I think that's in terms of innovation. I think there's still a lot within compliance, a lot of fear of getting things wrong, and rightly so. But I think that shouldn't stop you trying to innovate.
Yeah. So then, with regards to the tax situation, the duty situation, do you think then this is their way of trying to improve safer gambling, improve the gambling market, or do you think this is the first step to prohibition?
Who? You mean the government?
Yeah.
No, I think it simply is I mean, I don't want to get too political, but I think it simply is a stealth tax budget. I simply believe it is a budget that is just trying to find avenues to generate as much tax revenue from public as possible to close, how much debt or how much,
Do you see a world where tax gets reduced in the future for gambling tax?
I mean, I do, because I think it might depend on the government that's in power at the time. I think if the industry itself can do what it needs to do to improve the optics, and then in the future the government and the people see actually the loss of actual legitimate revenue from industry, potentially closures, I think there will be a change, because I think that 20% increase, a double, there's a lot of room.
19%.
Yeah, 90%. There's a lot of room for a little bit of a backtrack. There's a lot of room. Okay, we go from 40% to 35%.
But they've never done that with personal tax.
That's true.
That just keeps going up. And every time I think maybe it's going to decrease next year because they made enough money, it goes up.
Yeah, but they've taken. It's not. I know it's a very small win, but the government would probably say it's a win. But they've got rid of the bingo tax, didn't they?
Yeah, but that's probably one of the safest forms of gambling. I mean, I don't have the data to hand in terms of what.
Also, land-based was frozen, right? Land-based, there's been little impact on the land-based.
Comes in later, but then if you look at what causes harm and what's shown to cause harm in the past, they done. You remember a while ago they reduced maximum bet on FOBTs on fixed odd betting terminals.
£2, yeah.
So now they've increased tax on online.
Yeah.
Probably going to see more consumers go back to the betting shops using the FOBTs. Could see an increase there. Increase in fixed odd betting terminal usage. We know historically increased street crime, robberies, burglaries. All of that went through the roof when people were chasing their losses through betting shop activity. So again, it just comes back to, I don't think all of this was deeply enough considered, and all it would have taken was, let's get one person from the industry to sit in on this discussion. It could be anyone really. It wouldn't need to be someone with a lot of experience. Most of them would have been able to say, yeah, that's a bad idea. Yeah. But it didn't happen.
I don't even think it's a good day. It was a good day for the Gambling Commission themselves. I don't think it's a good day because don't forget, the industry is what pays the bills for the commission. So I don't think it's a good day for the commission.
The Gambling Commission have made it really, really clear time and time again, and there's no reason not to believe them. They want to tackle illegal gambling in the UK. They know it's a massive problem and they want to tackle it. So 100%, whilst they might have known it was coming, they might have had conversations, there is no way they were happy with it, because they have been trying to tackle as best as they can illegal market. So I imagine they are extremely, trying to use a nice word that doesn't get blocked off, but extremely annoyed by this.
That's a question. I didn't have this in my notes, but what can the commission do then following these set changes?
I
That
don't
can.
think there is anything that they can do. That would offset this some way. I mean, I don't think there's anything that they can do. To be fair, you know, they're not in control of operator finances. They don't, you know, any reduction that they make. For example, let's say, I don't know, we're going to reduce, you know, the amount you have to donate every year to a gambling charity. All of these things that they can make, they'd be very, very small amounts in comparison to what operators will be feeling in losses. So I don't think there's much that they can do. I think they just need to. Their strategy seems to have been, and from their most recent briefing, their long-term strategy is still to do what they can to combat the illegal market. I think they stay firm on that and continue to invest in that to make sure that we make it really, really hard as a country for illegal operators to work. I think that's what they do. That's the only thing they can do, is really push on that side of things, because then hopefully that urges customers to come back to the safer environments where they're going to be better protected. I hope that's what they do. I'm actually not. I believe that is what they do. I've got no reason to believe that they wouldn't back up what they've been saying.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
time to wrap
Yeah.
up. So I've got a couple of questions for you as always. I like to end the episode. I haven't asked you these in a
No.
while because we've had guests. But tell me something this week. Tell me something recently that hasn't gone as planned, hasn't gone well, a challenge, something that you're unhappy with.
Hasn't gone to plan. Unhappy.
Other than the tax.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Coming to that time of year, right, where it's like you kind of taking stock and you're analysing your year and how it's gone. I think something that's, I mean, I wouldn't say gone bad. I think something that has been a bit eye-opening is just in some of the new pieces of work I've taken on. I think there's been a realisation that more work is needed than I anticipated. So it just meant more time, potentially more time away from family this time of year. But I think with that being said, I'm still confident that things will be okay. So, you know me, I'm a bit of a positive person and glass half full. So that would probably be something that hasn't gone so well. But with that being said, I'm still very confident that things will go well.
I think a lot of people will be able to relate to that as well. Like pressures at work and workloads continuously increasing. I think a lot of people will be able to relate to that. So that's a good one. So then tell me something positive, something that's gone well for you, something good over the last week or so.
Ooh.
I saw videos of your son playing basketball. That was something that was something that went really well.
Do you know what? I think this again is a bit personal, but something that's gone well. And again, it's just to do with my son. I think he's going into his GCSEs now, and over the last kind of year and a half, there've been a lot of challenges kind of just to get him to focus. And I genuinely didn't think he would ever focus. He was always the cool guy, always the guy that kind of would just get in trouble for not focusing. He's a bit laissez-faire, and one day he'll be up and one day he'll be down. But he's gone into this year, and he's transformed. And I've even asked him why. He's like, I'm just doing it. But he's actually now, in terms of, they have this this rewards system in terms of like a star and system, and he in the whole school has the second highest stars in the whole school. So that's there. Yeah,
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's been an absolute transformation. But I can't put my finger on it, and then he won't tell me why. But that's been something that's gone really real well at the start of this school year.
That's a good one. Again, something that a lot of people can relate to. You know, their family, their children's successes.
I think all I say is, one thing I would say I constantly do is I constantly reinforce to him the importance of kind of being reliable, being somebody who applies himself, and somebody who can be trusted. And I think those three values I just constantly reinforce. And I think that's just at some point it's clicked actually. If he wants to be a basketball player, he has to be reliable. He has to be able to work hard. He has to be able to apply himself. He has to be trusted. And I think it's just maybe that reinforcement, that don't give up on reinforcing the right messages. So that can go back to compliance team. You know, you might feel, stressed, and you might feel actually the message not getting through. But if you continuously just reinforcing the right messages to the board, to your teams, eventually something will click.
I like that. It's a good way to wrap up. So look, thank you for listening. Like we said at the start, we're not tax experts, but we've given our verdict, our view on the potential impact that the duty changes in the UK might have, and hopefully some insight into what operators, especially in compliance departments, can do differently. And as always, thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for commenting, for sharing. It'd be great to get this episode to break another record, but I'm not going to hold my heights.
Compliance and tax, bloody. If we do that would be unreal. I would say that would be unreal.
I'm expecting about 10 views on this one, and that will just be my mum viewing it 10 times. But yeah, thank you for listening. Continue to subscribe, continue to share, and reach out to us. We're lining up our next 5 to 6 guests for the next few episodes. Doesn't matter what your expertise is. If you're interested in coming on and you've got something interesting, a topic that you think would be interesting to discuss, reach out to us. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.